even that?
Welcome to Goblin-Inc. My name is Spades. Last season I used to be rank 1 with Shred, but now Rob is making a Shred build before me, my friend Screamheart has made a Shred build before me. I feel a little bit left behind. But I spent 2 months to get that rank 1, just theory-crafting Shred last season. I think I have some good insight. In good fun, I think I would like to go over their builds respectfully, talk about what I like and dislike about their builds, and then talk about my build. I think that will be fun, as we do not really know what's gonna be best till Gauntlet comes out. We're gonna start by talking about Rob's build. Rob's build is a copy of my previous season build. No shame in that. He is a competitive guy and wanted to beat me. I don't have a problem with it. But there are some problems that he did some modification for the new season, obviously. So, last season though, one of the big breakthrough was for me to play Starlight Aspect, which enabled me to play without Lust for Carnage. We needed the Paragon points, blah blah blah, big story. But this season we do not need that, as the pet offers, resource support. 20 primary resources, we do not need Starlight Aspect anymore. The pet takes care of that. Another thing last season that I did was go away from running pets to be more tanky. This season though, we have the opposite problem. So I have a problem with this, I think this season you want to run pets, but I have my own version of running pets, which is running 2 pets instead of 3, because mathematically it makes more sense, you will see later. Don't really have many big problems with the build other than that, but there is one. Again, not running Arida's Inexorable Will. I think that not running Arida will be a mistake. We're gonna talk about that. Arida is what made me beat Barbarians last season and forced many players to switch to Druid. Let's take a look at Screamheart version now. I like this build better than Rob's build because of the pets providing more damage. Pets were a problem previous season as you lacked the defense, but now that is not an issue anymore. I see that Screamheart is running Hunter's Zenith to reset the cooldown of T-Bolt, which makes sense, but Hunter's Zenith is a quite substantial DPS loss, and I think there is a better way to activate T-Bolt without using Hunter's Zenith. I think Rob might use the Symbiotic, as he's been using that from my Lightning Storm build. But there is a third way to do it, which I think is gonna be good for this build specifically. He's also running God's Lair Crown instead of Shaco. It's a good choice when you don't run Petrify, which we get into a second. I believe that Arida's Will is very OP, but because you're running Hunter's Zenith, you ideally want to run Ring of the Starless Sky. So if you have Ring of the Starless Skies plus Arida's, you cannot run Hunter's Zenith. So that's why I think Hunter's Zenith, even though while really good, has to go. On top of that, we have here a two-handed weapon. Two-handed weapon is something I've used before in the previous season, but after studying my replays and the frames of Shred, I think the animation of Shred is better served after a certain amount of attack speed that is reached with accelerating and the one-handed weapon. That makes for a smoother gameplay, and in my opinion also has benefits for other mechanics, which I will discuss when I talk about my build. A quick look at the Paragon board. Rob was using the old Paragon board for AOZ. Screamheart makes good Paragon board usually. He's starting with Werewolf, okay. Some things I don't like is Heightened Malice, because the build is strong in AoE, but lacks a little bit of single target as always. In this case though, I think it's fine. Ancestral Guidance, I think it's a shame not to run the Ancestral Guidance rare node. So we have here for now for 6 boards, but only 5 glyphs. I think this is a good board, but I don't really like the Heightened Malice. I prefer to have another glyph because that's not active on bosses. Overall, a very good build. This is gonna be the table of content, starting with theory crafting and FAQ, and I suggest you watch the how to play section as well. I will convince you that 2 pets is better than 3 pets. It all starts by understanding one thing, that this item must be in the build. Without it, I would have not been rank 1 last season. Barbarians would have beat me, but Arida is extremely overpowered. What does Arida need to shine? Well, it needs to reset the cooldown of your Petrify very quickly. We do that in two ways. First of all, because we're running one hand, we are also using accelerating, making our build even faster. I do really prefer, and I think that the build is a lot smoother with one-handed and accelerating, but the added bonus is that we're gonna be resetting the cooldown of Flicker Step faster, and we're gonna be able to get that Petrify back off cooldown super quickly. Really Petrify, but also because we can jump through enemies so quickly thanks to improved animation of Shred, we really get to play a lot faster, more mobile, more dash with Flicker Step, get the Petrify back in time super quickly. All of these play together in one cohesive idea and fantasy on how to play this build. So Shepherd being on the Amulet because of that, because we don't run a two-handed weapon. Now the value of the pets is a little bit lower. How much lower? Well, 3 ravens and 2 wolves. This is gonna be a 75% multiplier. You would wrongly believe that adding Poison Creeper would add 15% more damage, but the more of a stat you add, it becomes additive together. And you will only be adding about 10% damage with an extra pet. Really not that much of a DPS loss. Especially if you think that because we don't run Hunter Zenith, we can run an extra offensive aspect like the Ring of the Starless Sky. Meaning that this gives us a pure 40% damage multiplier. So, now that we have an extra slot on our skill, Earth and Bulwark and Trample both have a decently low cooldown, especially because Totem also has cooldown reduction, and even more if you have a Harlequin Crest. That would be also good for the cooldown reduction. No problem, you're gonna have your Unstoppable enough up. You can always have your 4-second damage. Mind you that T-Bolt's will buff lasts for a second. You're not gonna have a problem keeping it up with the Trample and or with the Earth and Bulwark. So we do not need to run Symbiotic or Unto Zenith. I played this is perfectly fine for the season. And this is my theory crafting section. We're gonna close it here. We also worth mentioning that one of the things I did not like about Rob's build was the excessive resource management, but new season comes with resource support, which cuts off their need of any regeneration in this build. This is completely broken. Shred is a low-cost skill that the second Shred and third Shred does not cost any resource at all, only the first one cost, meaning that really we do not have resource issue at all this season. Let's talk about how to play the build. So, activating your Unstoppable, pulling all your enemies and shredding them, very well done. Now, you can add one more level to this, which is you can dash through enemies as you pull them. So after the pull, you can dash through the enemies once. That will help with recovering the cooldown of Petrify quickly. So, Unstoppable is to increase your damage. Shred, this one, pull, shred, kill them. And now, you're gonna have another pull every 5 seconds. But now I think it's gone over mobs that were dead. But you have another pull every 5 seconds. So remember to attack quickly, dash through enemies, recover the cooldown of your Petrify. Now we're gonna get a pull here. This, you can dash through them once, recover 10 seconds like that. We're gonna get another pull. See, they're coming to us, no problem. Then bam, another pull. Dash through them. If you don't remember to dash through them in the beginning, it's okay. You're gonna learn to do that as you play the build more, but that makes really clearing a lot faster. And overall, very strong. Very simple. Petrify, Unstoppable, dash through enemies, and switch between Trample and Earth and Bulwark to keep the damage buff of Unstoppable from your T-Bolt's Will. Very simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Tips and tricks. Very fast, very fast. Bosses. Increase your damage on bosses. Take out Arida for elements and change your helm to Godslayer. If you want a build that only does bosses, it uses two-handed weapon. There's a second link in the description. It's linked to my boss Slayer build. It will use two-handed weapon. It's more for bossing. Does very poorly in other types of content, but you might enjoy that type of playstyle. Check it out if you like it. Let's go over the gear. Like I mentioned, you do not need to play Shaco, a rare helm. I would suggest with Disobedience, because if you're not min-maxed, We are not armor capped in this build, it's really not necessary to be armor capped. But you have various ways to be armor capped. One is by not playing Shaco and playing Disobedience. Second way is by not playing Madwolf and playing a normal chest with armor. But I still believe the build to be pretty tanky, even with Madwolf. Especially because the totem gives us 2 more damage reduction rolls that we can abuse for more DR and running Madwolf instead. So I really like Madwolf, really like Shaco. Godslayer is not so good as the pool interferes with Aridas in my experience. For the gloves, I like to run attack speed, crit chance, shred, and willpower, which I do not have. I have lucky hit chance, completely useless. Fortify here. I actually suggest you keep the aspects in this order, which is retaliation, shepherd, accelerating on the totem, and stormclaw on the totem, in the case you want to snapshot, because you're a sweaty nerd in snapshots. Tibolt's Will, Flicker Step, to reset the cooldown of Arida. One-handed weapon with crit damage, close damage, all stats willpower. This is pretty much the perfect thought in my opinion, is willpower, crit chance, double DR. Instead of 1 DR, you can also have cooldown reduction, wouldn't be a problem. Arida. Arida does a lot of damage. Actually melts mobs in T70s, which is Gauntlet. If you can get a perfectly roll 925 Arida, oh my god. So much damage from the pool. Actually good damage from the pool, not even joking. Ring of the Starless Sky, it's not necessary. You can run Stampede instead, you can run Elements. You can run a normal ring, but if you have Starless Skies, finally you have a build that really benefits from crit damage, core skill damage, and does not like Thundershock node, which allows you to play something that does not have close and distant in every slot. On the Amulet, move speed, double armor, and venom. Again, this is not gonna be needed if you have a rare helm, as Disobedience will cover up your DR rolls. So you could have a Venom, move speed, and DR here or whatever. I would suggest to get move speed and Venom, some DR or some armor, and finish your armor if you have issues by, you know, not having Harlequin or not having Madwolf Clay. Very simple to armor cap in this build. Personally, I do not armor cap. I have 11k armor, because 11k armor is gonna be what's needed for the Gauntlet, and 13k for T100. But 11k for Nightmare 100 still, I'm not dying, so why running more? This build is fairly much tankier than the other builds, as you have a lot more mobility and you're harder to deal damage to. Seasonal mechanic. We run Adrenaline with the classic setup of duration, tactical, and Genesis. 50% duration of 50% damage. If you don't have this, play Pool. Pretty good instead of Genesis. If you don't have here Evernight, I would suggest you to run damage reduction. You can also take out Breaking Support for damage reduction. Both of them aren't really needed. The only one you need to play is Resource Support. So damage reduction, I would run it if you feel squishy. Otherwise, Overnight Breaking Support. Breaking Support is for bosses, by the way. Just 20% more damage, really not needed. So you could even just run Evernight and damage reduction. Those are your options here. Just always run support with Tempest. That's really the only thing you have to know about. Talents, we do not use basic skills. We just put 2 points in Maul. We do not use Wild Impulses, as it has been found to be additive. It has been tested by various people. We have Shred, max ranks with Primal Shred. We take full points in those passives. Even Iron Fur, even though it's only for Trample, it's still fine. It's still gonna beat about 3% up all the time. Earthen Bulwark, you take Fortify here. You take Vigilance, even though the uptime is not gonna be that high. You still get a portion of damage reduction between these or between Iron 4. And we have a lot of extra point for this build. Ancestor Fortitude full points. If you have Shaco, you do not need points for Wolves, and you do not need points for Trample. If you do not have Shaco, you have to put 1 point here. We're gonna show you where to take the points from. I like to run Nature's Reach. This actually works with Aridas, but you can take this off if your Arida is not a high roll for damage. It one-shotting things for me, so it's kinda crazy. 3 points in Raven, so you can get the Brutal Raven for 2 additional Ravens. 3 points on Envenom, 1 in Close, 1 in Neurotoxin. I like Petrify, 2 points. 3rd point not needed. We have a lot of resource. Full points in the shape-shifting traits. We take Ears and Strength because I like the consistency. I even like the overpower damage boost. I can show you now a clip, I think, of the overpower just one-shotting Lilith. You get a lot of overpowers. A lot of attack speed. At 3% chance of overpower, you're likely to maybe start your gauntlet by one-shotting the boss with an overpower in the first 2 seconds. Defensive posture, we get full ranks in Unrestrained and a couple of points in Thick Hide. I like to run 2 and 1, or you can also run 3 in Thick Hide. You can take points out from this one and use them for the Trample and use them for the Wolf. The boons are very simple. We run Wariness, Scythe Talons, and Avian Wrath. Play with Iron Feather if you want to be tankier instead of Scythe Talons. I like Bolster. Energize is not needed, but if you want, just run Energize instead of Bolster and it will be fine. Then we have Masochist, and if you want more damage you can run Overload, but I like Masochist healing a lot. Another reason why one-handed weapon is strong is because you can snapshot a lot of things. In this build you can snapshot Retaliation, you can snapshot Accelerating, and you can even snapshot Elements if you take out your Arena for bosses. So that will be 3 snapshots for the build. And probably Snapshot is not going to be fixed, as they have never been able to fix it in Diablo 3 either. We'll see if they lock gear in Gauntlet, but we'll see. If you want to run an Elixir, I would say the Precision Elixir with crit chance is pretty good, but of course the one from L-Tides is better. The lower tier with 5% crit chance, the potent Precision Elixir, is pretty cheap. You can run this often and not run out of mats. My final thoughts on this build is that it's definitely S tier, and it's gonna be very strong on Gauntlet, maybe gonna be beating Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm cannot use Arida's Will very well, and Shred is the best build at using Arida. It's gonna be a battle between the aimbot of Lightning Storm, as with controller you can aimbot through walls, and the Arida's Will of Shred. It's gonna be a tough fight. I'm gonna be looking forward to that.